Welcome to Walls and Wire. Today we're talking about a statement that truly highlights the sharp edge of political discourse in our nation. Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin recently declared, and I quote, "This is the most naked hypocrisy." It's something we see a lot, isn't it, as Malaysians? These huge promises made during election time. Passionate speeches about reform, about a better Malaysia, protecting our rights. We listen, we hope, maybe get a bit invested.
Right. There's always that hope.
But then, power shifts, the dust settles, and sometimes, sometimes those promises just seem to fade away.
Or seem completely contradicted by actions, yeah.
Exactly. It gives you this odd feeling like, hang on, didn't they say the opposite? You start wondering about the real game plan.
It does make you question things.
So just thinking aloud here, what are your first thoughts, maybe for our listeners too, when you hear about political promises versus what actually happens on the ground here in Malaysia?
Well, it's interesting you start there because Tan Sri Muhyiddin's accusation, that naked hypocrisy line, it really hits at the core of this specific, very current issue.
Okay.
He's reacting directly to the charges brought against Hillman Idom. He's the youth chief for Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia.
Ah, okay. Hillman Idom. And the charge is?
He's facing charges under Section 505B of the Penal Code.
Section 505B. Right. For those of us not deeply familiar with the Penal Code, what does that actually mean? What kind of law is it?
Okay. So Section 505B, in simple terms, it deals with making statements that are seen as conducive to public mischief.
Public mischief. That sounds broad.
It is quite broad. It essentially covers statements, even rumors, that could potentially cause fear or alarm to the public or, incite someone to commit an offense against the state or public order.
So it's about preventing unrest, essentially.
That's the idea behind it, yes. But its application often comes down to interpreting what's likely to cause trouble, what counts as mischief. And that's why it's significant, because it can be used to curb speech, framing it as a threat.
I see. And these specific charges against Hillman, they came from?
They stem directly from a speech he gave at a rally.
Okay, what was the rally about?
Now, this is the crucial part. The rally was specifically organized to protest the Sedition Act.
Right. So let me get this straight. He's charged under one law, 505B, for speaking out against another controversial law, the Sedition Act, at a protest about the Sedition Act.
Precisely. That's the nod. You have someone potentially facing legal action for protesting a law often criticized for limiting free speech.
That does sound tangled. And that leads us back to Muhyiddin's hypocrisy comment.
Exactly. This is where his accusation really finds its footing. You have to remember the context of the Sedition Act itself.
It's been around a long time, right? Colonial era.
Yes. Deep roots. And consistently controversial. Critics see it as a tool governments can, and sometimes do, use to silence opposition or inconvenient voices.
Because it's quite broad in what counts as seditious.
Very broad. Intent doesn't always matter as much as the supposed tendency of the words. Now, the key point Muhyiddin is leveraging is that Pakatan Harapan,
who are now a major part of the unity government.
Correct. When they were in opposition, they very publicly, very strongly promised to abolish the Sedition Act. It was a big part of their reform agenda.
A cornerstone promise, you could say. More freedom, more open debate.
That was the message. So Muhyiddin's point is stark. The very coalition, or at least key parts of it, that promised to get rid of this restrictive law is now in power.
And under their watch, someone is charged, maybe not under sedition itself in this exact case, but under a similar kind of public order law for protesting against sedition.
That's the crux of his naked hypocrisy claim. He sees it as a massive inconsistency, a failure to follow through on a fundamental promise about democratic space.
He basically argued Hillman had every right to criticize the act.
Absolutely. Muhyiddin framed it as a fundamental right, freedom of speech. He's saying you should be able to oppose laws you disagree with, especially ones like the Sedition Act, without facing charges like this.
Okay, so it's a powerful argument on the surface. But politics being politics, is this purely about principle for Muhyiddin? Or is there a strategic angle here too?
Oh, there's almost certainly a strategic dimension. I mean, pointing out hypocrisy is standard opposition politics, right? It resonates.
Sure, it rallies your own base, puts the government on the defensive.
Exactly. But it's also positioning. By taking this stand, Muhyiddin paints himself and his party, Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia, as the defenders of free speech.
Trying to capture the narrative perhaps appeal to those disillusioned with the current government's pace of reform.
Precisely. It's about consolidating opposition support, maybe drawing in others who feel that space for dissent is shrinking. It definitely dials up the political heat, focusing the debate on freedom versus control.
And it's not just him saying this, right? His party's youth wing has weighed in, too.
Yes, the Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia youth wing came out very strongly. They didn't mince words. They called the charges against Hillman political intimidation.
Political intimidation. That's a serious claim.
It is, and framing it that way has clear implications. It suggests this isn't just law enforcement doing its job, but a deliberate move to silence an opponent.
Which taps into existing fears some people might have about dissent being suppressed.
Exactly. It plays on those anxieties. When a major party's youth wing says this, it fuels the idea that maybe legal tools are being used for political ends. That can really damage trust in institutions, suggesting they aren't neutral.
And are they just condemning it, or do they plan to do more?
They're doing more. They've declared full backing for Hillman, naturally, but they've also said they want to use this specific case as a sort of catalyst.
A catalyst for what?
To push harder for the abolition of the Sedition Act. They're trying to turn this defense of their youth chief into a renewed campaign for that long-standing reform goal.
So using the government's action to fuel the very campaign the government arguably hasn't delivered on. Interesting tactic.
It could potentially create waves if they manage to mobilize not just their supporters, but also civil society groups, lawyers, activists who've always opposed these laws.
It could genuinely put the Sedition Act and maybe laws like 505B back under the spotlight.
It could. It forces the government back into that difficult conversation about balancing security and order with fundamental rights like free speech and assembly. It potentially restarts a wider public debate on how we handle dissent.
Okay, so stepping back from the party politics for a moment, why does this whole episode matter to the average person, someone just listening to this? What's the bigger picture here?
Well, fundamentally, it's about trust. Trust in our institutions, trust in the democratic process itself here in Malaysia.
How so?
If people start to feel that laws are being applied unevenly, maybe used to target critics or opponents, that erodes public confidence, not just in the government, but in the legal system, too.
It creates a kind of chilling effect. People might hesitate to speak out.
Potentially, yes. Even if they aren't political figures, they might think twice about expressing opinions, even online or amongst friends, if they feel the lines are blurry or arbitrarily enforced. It's that constant balancing act, isn't it?
Maintaining order versus protecting freedom.
Exactly. And ensuring that protection isn't just theoretical, but real in practice. It highlights how sometimes, even with talk of reform, the old tools or ways of managing dissent can persist.
It really does make you think about what freedom of expression actually means day to day in Malaysia. What are the real boundaries? And how do events like this, a politician charged for speaking at a protest, how does that filter down and affect our own conversations, our own sense of what's okay to say?
And it makes you wonder about the underlying strategy, doesn't it? Is this the government simply applying existing laws as they see fit, maybe drawing a line in the sand about certain kinds of protest or rhetoric?
Or is it something more, a subtle shift towards being tougher on opposition voices?
It's hard to say definitively, but these aren't just isolated incidents. They become part of the larger story about governance and accountability in Malaysia. They show that clash between the promises made, often in the heat of campaigning,
and the, let's say, complex realities and pressures of actually being in power.
Precisely. That tension between ideals and governance is always there, constantly shaping how things unfold.
It definitely leaves us with a lot to think about regarding where political speech is heading in Malaysia. Will that space for debate open up, or will these existing laws keep casting a long shadow? And ultimately, what does that mean for holding power accountable? Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.